The first time I noticed the car, I told myself it meant nothing. It was a gray sedan, nothing remarkable, parked across from my building on a Tuesday morning when I left for work. I only clocked it because the engine was running and nobody got out. I remember thinking that was a little odd, and then I stopped thinking about it entirely. That's how it always starts, I think, with something small enough to dismiss. I work in a mid-sized city, live alone in a second-floor apartment, and at the time I had a routine I could have drawn you a map of. Coffee at 7:15, out the door by 7:40. The same route to the train, the same platform, the same car if I could manage it. I like the predictability. I'm that kind of person, which is probably why it took me so long to understand what was happening. The second time I saw the gray sedan was a Thursday, parked 2 blocks from my office building. Different neighborhood, different context. I slowed my walk for just a moment, tried to see through the windshield, and couldn't. The morning light was hitting the glass at an angle that turned it into a mirror. I kept walking. I told myself, gray sedans are common. This is not the same car. You are being paranoid. I believed myself more or less. Then a week later, my colleague Diane mentioned that someone had been asking about me at the front desk. She said it casually, the way you might mention that there was cake in the break room. She said it was a man, politely dressed, who had asked what floor I worked on and when I usually came in. When the receptionist refused to share that, he thanked her and left. I went home that night and sat on my couch in the dark for a long time. I was doing the quiet kind of arithmetic that frightened people do, adding up small things and hoping the total stays low. The car, the man at the desk, the feeling I had developed gradually and then all at once that I was being observed. Not followed dramatically, not chased, just watched, in the patient and attentive way that a person watches something they plan to understand completely. I changed my route to the train the next morning, and the morning after that, I left 20 minutes earlier than usual. Neither change felt like enough, but both made me feel slightly less like a specimen. For about 4 days, I felt almost normal. Then I got home on a Wednesday evening and found a single folded piece of paper wedged into the gap between my apartment door and the frame. Not in the mailbox, not slipped under the door. Pressed into the frame itself, at eye level, precisely. I stood in the hallway for longer than I should have before I opened it. Inside was my weekly schedule, not typed, handwritten in small and careful letters, every day of the prior week. The time I left, the time I returned, which evenings I had the lights on past 11. There was no name, no message, nothing threatening in the words themselves, which somehow made it worse. It was purely informational, like someone was showing me what they knew, proving it. I called the police that evening and they took a report, photographed the note, told me to document anything else that felt wrong. They were professional and thorough, and I appreciated all of it. But when the officer asked if I had any idea who might have done this, I realized I didn't. Not even a suspicion I could name. The gray sedan never came back, or if it did, I stopped recognizing it. The feeling of being watched faded slowly over the following months, the way a bruise does. But I never went back to my old routine. Some part of me understands now that predictability is a kind of invitation, and I've spent a long time since then trying to become harder to read. The next story comes from someone who thought they were alone. I should have taken a cab. I know that now, and I knew it then, somewhere at the back of my mind, when I stepped onto the platform at Millhaven Road Station at midnight on a February night. But the ride would have cost $30, and I was 26 and stubborn about that kind of thing. The platform was mostly empty. There was a woman at the far end reading something on her phone, and a couple near the stairs who were arguing in low voices and clearly wanted privacy. I stood somewhere in the middle, hands in my coat pockets, listening to the particular quiet of a city pretending to sleep. The air had that cold, metallic taste that train stations get in winter. My breath was visible. The board said the next train was 9 minutes away. I noticed the man because he came down the stairs at a pace that didn't match anything. Not hurrying, not strolling, moving in that deliberate, measured way that reads as purposeful until you realize the purpose isn't going somewhere. It's arriving near someone. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, a knit cap pulled low. He positioned himself approximately 10 feet to my left, and I felt the shift in the air the way you sometimes do when something changes in your environment before you've consciously identified what. I looked at him once, casually, and looked away. He was staring at the tracks, but I had the clear and immediate sense that he had just stopped staring at me. I took 2 slow steps toward the couple near the stairs, just adjusting my position. Just felt like standing somewhere different. He moved too, not immediately. He waited about 15 seconds, which I counted, and then shifted the same direction I had, maintaining the distance between us. My pulse was doing something I could feel in my throat. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was in my inside coat pocket, and the idea of reaching for it, of looking distracted for even a moment, felt dangerous in a way I couldn't fully articulate. The couple near the stairs had moved onto the stairs themselves, still arguing. The woman at the far end had her back to both of us. I was running the numbers and they weren't good. I started walking, steadily, toward the lit emergency phone mounted on the pillar near the far exit. I didn't run. Running felt like it would collapse whatever thin membrane of ambiguity was still holding. I walked like I had somewhere to be. Behind me, I heard his footsteps change. He was following, and he was no longer being careful about whether I knew it. I picked up the emergency phone and it connected immediately, a calm, female voice asking what my emergency was. I said my name, said the station, said there was a man following me on the platform and I needed someone there. I said it clearly and without dropping my voice loud enough that he would hear. I heard him stop walking. The woman on the line told me officers were on the way and to stay on the line. I turned around. He was standing about 20 feet back, perfectly still now, watching me hold the phone. We looked at each other for what felt like a long time. Then the train came. Not my train, an outbound one on the opposite track, and in the noise and light and movement of it passing, he was simply gone. The officers arrived 4 minutes later. They checked the station, checked the street outside, found nothing. I gave a description and filed a report. I took a cab home. I still take cabs after 10 o'clock every time, and I will keep doing that for as long as I need to, which I suspect is going to be a while. What follows is a story that resists easy explanation, sent to us by a woman who has since moved twice. I lived at the edge of a state forest for 3 years before things started, which is the part people always find the most unsettling. Not that it happened, but that it took so long to begin. My house was small and old, set back from a gravel road at the end of a long driveway. The tree line began about 40 feet from my back porch. On clear nights, I could see stars in the gap between the roof and the branches, which I loved. I had neighbors, but not close ones. I had a dog, a large and fearless shepherd named Milo, and his presence made me feel safer than any lock. For a long time, the forest felt benign. Then one September evening, Milo stopped going near the back door. It was gradual at first. He'd always slept near the rear of the house, close to the dog door he used to go out at night. Within a week, he had relocated entirely to the front room and would not be coaxed back toward the kitchen. He wasn't distressed, exactly. He wasn't whimpering or hiding. He was calm in the way that animals sometimes become when they have assessed something and made a decision. That calm felt worse than barking would have. I checked the yard. Nothing. I walked the perimeter of the property with a flashlight on 2 separate evenings and saw only trees and leaf litter, and the ordinary dark of a forest at night. But on the second night, standing at the edge of the yard with my flashlight pointed into the tree line, I had the distinct and physical sensation of being looked at. Not heard, not sensed. Looked at. Something directional, like a beam. I went inside and locked the door. The sound started about 10 days after that. Not loud and not every night. A slow, irregular movement in the trees, just beyond where the light from my porch reached. Animals make sounds in a forest. I knew that, had known it for 3 years. But these sounds had a quality I couldn't name at the time. They were patient. They moved when I moved, stopped when I stopped. One evening I walked out onto the porch and stamped my foot hard, the way you might to startle a deer. There was a pause of about 4 seconds, and then the sound continued exactly as before, at the same pace, in the same direction. I went back inside and sat at my kitchen table and thought about that pause. 4 seconds felt like a response. It felt like something that had registered the noise I made, considered it, and decided to proceed anyway. I bought additional motion sensor lights and installed them along the back fence line. On the third night after installation, every single light triggered between 2 and 3 in the morning. I know this because the flood of light woke me up, and I lay in bed watching my ceiling go white. I did not get up to look out the window. I'm not sure I can fully explain why, except that there was a quality to that night, to the silence around all that sudden light, that made me understand looking would be the wrong choice. I called a friend the next morning and told her everything. She stayed with me for a week, and during that week, nothing happened. No sounds, no lights. Milo even ventured back toward the kitchen once or twice. My friend was kind about it, and only gently suggested there might be a rational explanation. I nodded and agreed, and did not tell her about the footprints I had found that first morning after the lights triggered. Wide set, deep, and not arranged in a pattern I could match to any animal I know. They led from the tree line to a point about 12 feet from my back porch, and then stopped. Nothing coming back, just arrival and then absence. I moved out 4 months later. I've never gone back, and I've never stopped thinking about what was standing there in the light, just close enough to see me clearly through the glass.